Black teen humiliated at boarding gate. 15 minutes later. The airline begs for forgiveness. Step aside. Priority boarding is for first class. You're in the wrong lane. The words came out flat. Bored. The tone of someone who had said the same thing 1,000 times and had never once been corrected. Donna Marsh did not look up from her podium when she said it. She did not need to. She had already made her assessment from 20 feet away the moment she watched the teenager in the faded hoodie stand up from his seat and shoulder his canvas backpack. She had already decided. The words were just the formality. They were not whispered. They were not apologetic. They landed in the half-lit air of Gate B14 the way a verdict lands, with the flat, unquestioned authority of someone who had spent 27 years deciding who belonged in this lane and who did not. There was no hesitation in them. There was no doubt. There was only the practiced certainty of a woman who had built her entire professional identity around the ability to read a passenger in 3 seconds and be right. She was not right tonight. What Donna Marsh did not know, could not have imagined standing behind that podium in her Navy GTA uniform with her burgundy lipstick and her lacquered hair, was that the teenager she had just dismissed was the only person on Earth capable of preventing her airline from collapsing. That the worn canvas backpack she had already decided contained nothing of value held a hard drive worth $4.2 billion. That the boy she had just told to step aside was the reason there was still an airline for her to work for, and in 14 minutes that airline would be on the phone begging him to stay. Before we get into what happened next, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments below. And if this is the kind of story that stops you, cold hit subscribe right now. Because what is about to unfold at Gate B14 at John F. Kennedy International Airport is going to stay with you. I promise you that. It was 10:47 in the evening. Terminal 4 was doing what airports do at that hour, running on fluorescent light and low-level anxiety full of people who were either exhausted or pretending not to be. Gate B14 sat at the far end of the international concourse, and through its floor-to-ceiling windows, the massive silhouette of a Boeing 777 sat waiting on the tarmac. The aircraft was Flight 882, Global Transcontinental Airlines' flagship route to London Heathrow. It was the most profitable international route in GTA's schedule, the kind of flight that filled its first-class cabin with hedge fund managers and senior executives, and people who considered lie-flat beds a minimum standard of comfort. The priority lane was cordoned off by a thick velvet rope. The carpet beneath it was the kind of blue that signals you have arrived somewhere that expects a certain kind of person. Marcus Webb had been sitting in the gate area for 40 minutes before pre-boarding was called. He had chosen a seat directly facing the boarding podium, not out of nerves, but out of habit. He pulled out his laptop the moment he sat down. He put his headphones around his neck. He did not play music through them. He just typed his fingers moving across the keyboard in a steady, unhurried rhythm, lines of proprietary code filling the screen in front of him. He was wearing a Howard University hoodie faded at the cuffs, dark joggers, white Nike Air Force Ones with a scuff on the left toe he had never bothered to fix. He had a canvas backpack army green held shut at the broken zipper with a small carabiner clip. He did not look like money. He had never tried to. When the pre-boarding announcement came through the speakers, Marcus closed his laptop, slid it into his bag, and stood up. He checked his phone. Digital boarding pass. Seat 2A, first class. He shouldered his bag and walked toward the priority lane. He had no idea that Donna had been watching him for 20 minutes. He had no idea that she had already made her decision. He knew the way he always knew. The way you learn to know when it has happened enough times, that something in the air had shifted the moment he stood up. He had felt that shift before. He had felt it at 12 years old and at 16 and on every flight he had ever tried to board in clothing that did not announce his net worth. He walked toward the podium anyway. He always did. Donna did not raise her scanner. She crossed her arms. The boarding area for Flight 882 had the particular quality of spaces that believe in their own importance. The chairs were upholstered rather than plastic. The carpet was deep and clean. The overhead lighting was softer than the rest of the terminal, designed to signal to the people passing through that they had arrived somewhere that expected a certain standard. A discreet sign near the velvet rope read, "Global Diamond Elite and First Class. Priority Boarding." Beneath it, a second sign in smaller letters, "Please have identification and boarding documentation ready." Marcus had both. He had had both for 40 minutes. He had arrived at Gate B14 early because he always arrived early. Not because he was anxious. He had learned a long time ago to convert anxiety into preparation, to take the energy that fear wanted to use and redirect it into readiness. He arrived early so that he knew the layout. He arrived early so that he had time to work. He arrived early because he understood in a way that had been taught to him without words that he could not afford the margin for error that other people took for granted. He had spent the 40 minutes before boarding doing what he always did when he was not sleeping or eating or talking to someone he trusted. He worked. The code on his screen was the 6th iteration of a load-balancing algorithm that would, once integrated into GTA's back-end infrastructure, reduce the airline's scheduling conflict rate by an estimated 63%. He had been building it for 11 months. The version currently on his screen was the one he was satisfied with. He did not use the word finished about anything he built. He used satisfied. There was a difference. His company was called Apex Route. He had co-founded it at 17 with his college roommate, a systems engineer named Daniel Park, in a dorm room at Stanford University. He had dropped out 6 months later, not because he was failing, but because staying would have slowed him down. Apex Route had spent the past 3 years building predictive aviation software so precise that 2 of the industry's largest maintenance companies had already integrated it into their scheduling operations. The algorithm currently on Marcus's laptop was the flagship product, a system capable of routing, predicting, and resolving logistical failures in real time, across a network the size of a major international airline. GTA needed it desperately. Global transcontinental airlines had been bleeding money for 4 years. A cascading series of infrastructure failures, lost baggage systems, scheduling conflicts, outdated routing software that buckled under peak load, had combined to produce the worst financial stretch in the airline's 40-year history. Their stock price had dropped 31% in 18 months. 3 board members had resigned. The airline's debt-to-revenue ratio was the kind of number that made institutional investors quietly begin making other arrangements. The only thing standing between GTA and a bankruptcy filing was the acquisition of Apex Route's predictive software, specifically the encryption keys on the hard drive currently zipped inside Marcus's army green backpack, tucked between his laptop and a spare charging cable and a paperback copy of a mathematics textbook he had been reading for the 4th time. Without those keys, the software could not be integrated. Without the integration, the deal could not close. Without the deal, GTA's board had given the airline 6 months before the first creditors began filing. Arthur Nolan, GTA's CEO, had been awake for 36 hours. His assistant had texted Marcus at 7:14 p.m. "He's watching the clock. Please just get on the plane." Marcus had read the text, put his phone face down on his laptop, and gone back to the 6th iteration of the load-balancing algorithm. He was not nervous about the deal. The deal was settled. What made him quiet tonight, quieter than usual, which was saying something, was the particular exhaustion of a young man who knew exactly what was about to happen and had not yet found a way to make it not happen. He had been through enough boarding gates to know the calculation that certain people made when they looked at him. He understood the taxonomy. He understood that his hoodie and his age and his face produced a specific kind of arithmetic in certain minds, and that the result of that arithmetic was always the same wrong lane, wrong place, wrong person. He understood it. He had stopped being surprised by it. He had not stopped being tired by it. When the pre-boarding announcement came through, he closed his laptop and stood up. He checked his phone. Seat 2A, first class. First, Diamond Elite. He had earned the Diamond Elite status by flying more than 150,000 miles in 12 months, mostly between San Francisco, New York, and London, flying to meetings that most 19-year-olds did not attend. He had the status the same way he had everything else, by accumulating the specific, verifiable, undeniable evidence of it. He walked to the priority lane. Behind the podium stood Donna Marsh, and beside her, slightly to the left, stood Sophia Reyes. Sophia had been at GTA for 8 months. She was 26, sharp, detail-oriented, and constitutionally incapable of letting an error go unaddressed. She had spent most of her 8 months quietly horrified by certain patterns she observed at Gate B14. Patterns she did not yet have the tenure or the standing to confront directly. She had learned to read Donna's energy the way you learn to read weather. Not because you can stop it, but because knowing what is coming gives you time to decide what to do when it arrives. She had been watching Marcus since he sat down. She had noticed the Diamond Elite priority seating he had chosen. She had noticed the calm, focused way he worked, entirely unbothered by the ambient noise of the terminal. She had pulled up the passenger manifest on her tablet 40 minutes ago, not for any official reason, just because something in her wanted to confirm what she suspected. Marcus Webb, Seat 2A, First Class, Diamond Elite. Booking notation, executive clearance. Nolan Portal. She had looked at Donna, who was watching Marcus from behind the podium with the expression of someone who had already drawn a conclusion and was waiting for the conversation to confirm it. Sophia had taken a breath. She had said quietly, "The young man in the priority seating, he's Diamond Elite. The booking has an executive notation." Donna had looked at her with the patient, slightly tired smile of someone explaining something obvious. "Sophia, I've been doing this since before you were born. Trust the instinct." Sophia had opened her mouth. Donna had turned back to the microphone. The pre-boarding announcement had begun, and the moment had closed like a door. Now Marcus was at the podium. He held out his phone. The QR code glowed on the screen, the timestamp ticking in the corner, the seat number clearly visible to anyone who looked 2A. First class. GTA flight 882. Donna did not raise her scanner. She crossed her arms. She looked at Marcus with the expression of someone who was doing him a favor by explaining the obvious. "I think there's been a confusion, sweetheart," she said. "Economy boards after first class. You'll want to head back and wait until your zone is called." Marcus did not answer immediately. He looked at her for 1 full second, the kind of look that takes in everything and reveals nothing. Then he said in a voice that was entirely, almost unnervingly calm, "I'm in the right place. Seat 2A. You can scan it." He pushed the phone forward an inch across the counter. He did not snatch it back. He left it there between them, the screen still glowing the timestamp, still moving the evidence, still entirely present. Donna looked at the phone. She looked at Marcus. She picked up the phone with 2 fingers, the way you pick up something you are not sure is clean, and held it at an angle, studying the screen with narrowed eyes. "This looks like a screenshot to me," she said loudly enough for the first several passengers behind Marcus to hear. "The gate system doesn't accept screenshots." Sophia, at the side of the podium, did not move, but her hand tightened slightly on the edge of her tablet. Donna Marsh had started at Global Transcontinental Airlines at the age of 25 as a check-in clerk at a regional hub in Charlotte, North Carolina. She had been good at it immediately. She was organized, precise, and possessed of a memory that retained passenger preferences and terminal logistics, with the kind of accuracy that impressed her supervisors and annoyed her colleagues. She had worked her way up through 7 different roles in 6 different cities over 27 years and had arrived at Gate B14, Terminal 4 JFK Flagship International Route, 3 years ago. It was the crown of her career. the most prestigious boarding gate in the terminal. She had waited 24 years for it. She wore her GTA uniform the way certain people wear a uniform as the most important thing they own. The navy blazer was always pressed. The silk neck scarf, GTA branded the same one she had been given at a company recognition ceremony 8 years ago, was always tied in the same knot. The burgundy lipstick was always precisely applied. She arrived at the gate 30 minutes before her shift began, and she left 30 minutes after it ended. She knew every inch of the boarding process the way a musician knows a piece they have played 10,000 times. She had received 12 customer satisfaction awards in the past decade. She had also, over 27 years, developed what she privately thought of as her read, an instinctive rapid assessment of passengers that she believed was the product of experience and pattern recognition and genuine expertise. She did not think of it as prejudice. She would have been genuinely offended by that word. She thought of it as efficiency. The premium cabins she managed were full of a specific kind of person, and she had learned to identify that person quickly. Tailored clothing, certain luggage brands, a particular way of moving through the terminal, not hurried, not hesitant, just the settled ease of someone who had done this many times and expected it to go smoothly. In 27 years, Donna had flagged 3 actual fraud attempts at her gate. 3. She had elevated these 3 moments into the foundation of her professional mythology. Every suspicion she acted on was in her mind a direct extension of those 3 moments. She was protecting her airline. She was protecting her gate. She was doing what 27 years of experience had taught her to do. She had never once considered that the 3 people she had caught and the hundreds of people she had wrongly flagged existed on a very different moral ledger. Her relationship with Frank Hollister had developed over the 6 years since he became Terminal 4's shift manager. Frank was 51, broad-shouldered, possessed of a manner that had once been authority, and had slowly, through years of unchallenged small decisions, become something closer to certainty. He and Donna had built a professional partnership based on mutual reinforcement. When Donna flagged a passenger, Frank backed her. He did not ask questions. He did not review her reasoning. He had learned over 6 years that backing Donna was easier than not backing Donna, and that nothing had ever gone wrong enough to make him reconsider the arrangement. Neither of them had ever been seriously challenged. Not once in 27 years for Donna. Not once in 6 years for Frank. The combination of that unchallenged record and the authority their roles provided had produced in both of them the absolute conviction that their judgment was sound. It had also produced something else, something neither of them would have named or recognized: a complete inability to update that judgment in the face of contradictory information. When Donna's terminal had beeped green on Marcus's boarding pass, when the screen had displayed his name, his seat, his elite status in clear, unambiguous letters, she had experienced it not as information, but as an obstacle, something to work around. Her assessment had already been made. The system's confirmation was simply wrong. This is not uncommon. It is, in fact, one of the most ordinary and most dangerous things a person can do. Decide first, then manage the evidence accordingly. Earlier that evening, 40 minutes before Marcus approached the podium, Donna had watched him settle into the priority seating. She had watched his hoodie, his joggers, his worn sneakers, his age, his face. She had watched him open a laptop she could not see the screen of and type with a focus and fluency that might, to a different kind of observer, have suggested someone doing serious work. To Donna, it suggested someone trying to look like they belonged somewhere they didn't. She had murmured to Sophia keep an eye on the young man in the priority seats. Sophia had looked at Marcus. Then she had looked at Donna. Then she had quietly pulled up the passenger manifest on her tablet. Donna, she had said carefully, "The young man in the Howard hoodie. He's Diamond Elite. His booking has an executive notation. Nolan Portal." Donna had turned to her with the patient smile. "Trust the instinct, Sophia. I've been doing this since before you were born. But the manifest, I've got this one. The way she said it closed the conversation the way a lock closes a door. Sophia had looked down at her tablet. Marcus Webb, Seat 2A, First Class, Diamond Elite. She had looked up. Donna was already moving toward the microphone for the pre-boarding announcement. Sophia had stood very still for a moment. Then she had made a decision that she would think about later. The wrong decision, as she would also think about later. And she had stayed quiet. She had told herself she would speak up if it actually came to something. She had told herself Donna would scan the pass and see the green confirmation, and that would be the end of it. She had not factored in what Donna was capable of when the green confirmation arrived, and she looked at it and decided it was wrong. "It's not a screenshot," Marcus said. His voice had not changed temperature. It was the same level, even tone it had been since he approached the podium. The tone of someone who is not trying to convince you of anything, simply stating a fact that the evidence supports. You can see the timestamp moving in the corner. "It's the live GTA app. Just scan it." Donna looked at the phone in her two-fingered grip. The timestamp was in fact moving. The QR code was active. The seat number, 2A First Class, was plainly visible to anyone who looked at it directly. She looked at it directly. Then she set it down on the counter slowly and reached for her barcode scanner. The passengers behind Marcus had grown quiet. Not the quiet of disinterest. The particular attentive quiet of people who can sense that something is happening and are deciding whether or not to get involved. Behind Marcus, second in line, stood Gerald Sutton, 58 years old, GT, a first-class frequent flyer senior partner at Montgomery Sutton Capital, the firm underwriting the GTA Apex route acquisition. Though Gerald did not yet know that the teenager at the front of the line had any connection to that deal. Gerald was wearing a bespoke charcoal suit and carrying a slim leather briefcase that had cost more than most people's monthly rent. He had a transatlantic meeting in the morning and a low, simmering impatience that he had learned to express through posture rather than volume. He shifted his weight. He looked at Donna with the vague, approving expression of someone watching a minor problem be handled efficiently. He did not look at Marcus. Near the edge of the podium, Sophia stood very still. She had pulled up the passenger manifest on her tablet again, not because she needed to confirm what she already knew, but because she needed to have it ready. Her hand was at her side. She watched Donna raise the barcode scanner. The red laser swept across Marcus's QR code. The terminal emitted a clear, cheerful beep. The screen resolved Webby Marcus. Seat 2A. First Class. Diamond Elite. Clear to board. The letters were green. The message was unambiguous. The system had spoken in the clearest possible language. There was at this moment no reasonable professional path forward, except to hand Marcus his phone, say, "Welcome aboard," and step aside. Donna looked at the screen for 2 full seconds. Something moved across her face. Not doubt exactly more like the micro-expression of a person whose internal narrative has just encountered a speed bump and is calculating how to get around it rather than stop. She tapped a sequence of keys. "I'm getting a system flag," she said. Her voice had not changed. It still carried the professional, measured certainty of someone managing a routine complication. Could be a duplicated PNR. Happens with corporate bookings sometimes. "I'm going to need to see your physical passport and the credit card used to purchase the ticket." She said it loudly enough for Gerald Sutton to hear, loudly enough for the 4 passengers behind Gerald to hear. Not shouting, just the practiced carrying projection of someone who had spent 27 years making announcements in large, echoing spaces. Marcus looked at her. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and produced his passport. Dark blue American, well worn at the corners. He set it on the counter with the same deliberate calm he had used for everything else. "The ticket is a corporate booking. My company purchased it through GTA's executive portal." I don't travel with the company card. Ah, said Donna. The single syllable carried an entire verdict. She picked up the passport with 2 fingers, studied it briefly, set it back down on the counter. Then she turned, not toward Marcus, but toward the passengers behind him, a slight pivot that was entirely deliberate, that invited the queue into the conversation she was having. This is exactly the kind of situation I was concerned about, she said to the general air. Corporate booking no card system anomaly. It happens more than people realize. Folks, I do apologize for the holdup. We're just resolving a potential security issue at the front of the line. 2 phones rose in the crowd, not dramatically. Small, subtle movements the unconscious reach for a device when something feels wrong enough to document. Gerald shifted his weight again this time, with the satisfied expression of someone whose impatience is being validated by the sight of a competent professional handling a problem. He had not looked at Marcus directly in 30 seconds. Sophia moved. 2 steps toward the podium, her tablet in her hand, the manifest clearly visible on the screen. Donna, I can pull up the full passenger record right now. The booking notation shows executive clearance through the... Sophia. Donna's voice cut across without raising. I need you on the secondary scanner, please. Thank you. The thank you was a door. Sophia stopped. She looked at Marcus, and Marcus, without any particular expression, looked back at her. Something moved between them in that look, brief and wordless. Sophia took 1 step back. She did not go to the secondary scanner. She stood where she was, tablet against her chest, and watched. Marcus looked at Donna's name tag. Then he looked at Donna. Donna, he said. His voice, if anything, had gotten quieter. Not smaller. Quieter the way a person's voice gets when they are choosing each word with specific care. Look at the corporate locator code at the bottom of your screen. The last 5 characters. They read NOLAN. That is Arthur Nolan's office. The CEO of this airline. His office booked this seat through the executive portal. I am asking you to call it in before you make a decision that cannot be undone. I'm telling you this because I do not want to watch you lose your job tonight. There was a pause. A real one. Long enough for the ambient noise of the terminal to fill the space. The distant announcement of a departure, the hum of a cleaning cart somewhere down the concourse, the faint sound of Gerald's expensive shoe on the carpet. Then Donna let out a short, genuine laugh. Not cruel. Something almost worse than cruel, authentically amused. The laugh of someone who has heard every story and knows exactly which category this one belongs to. Arthur Nolan, she said. The CEO of Global Transcontinental Airlines personally booked a first-class ticket for a teenager in a hoodie. She shook her head slightly. I'll give you points for creativity. I genuinely will. She turned back to her terminal. Her fingers moved across the keyboard. The green screen on her display shifted, went red. Passenger offloaded. Ticket void. She slid the passport back across the counter. It hit the edge. It fell. It landed on the floor between the podium and the velvet rope, and the sound it made, a small flat slap against the carpet, was somehow the loudest thing that had happened in the last 5 minutes. Marcus looked at it on the floor. He bent down. He picked it up. Slowly. He straightened. He held it in his hand for a moment. He looked at Donna. His voice when he spoke was exactly the same temperature it had been at the beginning of the conversation. Not warmer, not colder, the same. I need to speak to your manager, he said. Right now. Donna was already reaching for the desk phone. She did not look at him when she picked up the receiver. Her voice into it was crisp, unhurried, carrying the mild satisfaction of someone who has correctly identified a problem and is now routing it through the appropriate channels. Frank, she said, can you come to B14? We have a situation. Frank Hollister came down the concourse the way men who have never been seriously wrong tend to move, like the outcome was already determined, and the walk was just the formality of arriving at it. He did not hurry. He did not need to. He covered the distance from the terminal operations office to gate B14 in 2 minutes and 12 seconds, flanked by 2 security contractors, and he had already constructed his understanding of the situation from Donna's 12-second phone summary before he turned the corner. He was 51. He had a broad face and the slightly red complexion of someone who ran hotter than average and wore jackets that were a size too small. His gray suit strained slightly across the shoulders. He carried the authority of his title the way some people carry a weapon, casually in the knowledge that they don't need to draw it to make the point. He did not look at Marcus first. He looked at Donna, and he nodded. The nod said, "I've got you. Tell me what you need. Tell me." He had been giving Donna that nod for 6 years. It had never once cost him anything. Then he turned to take in the situation, and his gaze swept across Marcus. The hoodie, the joggers, the worn sneakers, the young face, the canvas backpack, and settled into the expression of a man whose internal narrative has just been confirmed. He exhaled lightly through his nose. He said, "What's the problem here, bud?" He used the word without thinking about it. Donna gave him her version. She kept it clean and efficient. A young man attempting to board with what appeared to be a fabricated first-class boarding pass, claiming a corporate booking without the ability to produce the purchasing card, becoming difficult when questioned, requiring the ticket to be voided as a security precaution. She delivered it with the measured confidence of a professional presenting a solved problem to a superior. Frank listened with his arms crossed and his chin slightly raised. He nodded twice. Then he turned to Marcus and he stepped forward. Not aggressively, but deliberately closing the distance by about a foot more than was necessary for a conversation. "Look, son," he said. His voice was the voice of someone doing you a courtesy by explaining reality to you. "I don't know what kind of game you think you're running here, but this is a federal sterile zone. Donna voided that ticket, which means your status in this terminal just changed. You are now an unauthorized individual. You have about 30 seconds to turn around and walk out before I make a call that ruins your evening a lot more than missing this flight." He let that sit for a moment. Then he looked at the growing crowd with the mild managing expression of a man who was simply restoring order. "Sorry for the holdup, folks. We'll have the lane cleared in just a minute." Gerald Sutton, still second in line, gave a small, approving nod. Marcus looked at Frank. He did not look away. He did not shift his weight or adjust his grip on his backpack or change anything about his posture. He simply looked at the man in front of him the way you look at something you have already calculated and found to be exactly what you expected. When he spoke, he did not speak quietly to Frank. He spoke at the natural, clear volume of someone who understands that what they are saying is intended for more ears than one. "My name is Marcus Webb," he said. "I am the co-founder of Apex Root, GTA's CEO. Arthur Nolan booked this seat through the executive portal. The PNR locator code on your terminal ends in NOLAN. I am asking you to pull up that record, not overwrite it, just look at it. Before you make a decision, you cannot reverse. I am telling you this once frank because I do not want to watch you lose your job tonight. Pull up the record." The terminal was quiet in a way it had not been 5 minutes ago. Not silent. Airports are never silent. But the particular quiet of a crowd that has stopped making its own noise to listen to someone else's. Frank's response was a short, loud laugh. Performative. He aimed it at the audience the way a comedian aims a punchline. Not to Marcus, but past Marcus, to the assembled first-class passengers who were watching this be resolved. Arthur Nolan called him personally, Frank said with the cheerful disbelief of a man sharing an absurd joke. A teenager in sweatpants. The CEO booked the seat himself. "That's beautiful, son. I genuinely appreciate the creativity." He turned to the security contractors. "Kincaid, let's get him moved to the outer terminal. We've got a flight to board." The contractor, a large man professional moving with the careful efficiency of someone who did this for a living, stepped forward and put his hand on Marcus's arm. Not roughly, just firmly, the hand of institutional authority making its point. Marcus pulled his arm free. "Clean, sharp, immediate." He turned to look at the contractor and he said in a voice that was not loud and was not soft, "Don't touch me." The contractor stopped. He looked at Frank. His hand was hovering in the space Marcus's arm had occupied half a second ago, and he was looking at Frank the way people look at supervisors when they need confirmation that the order they just received was correct. Frank's jaw tightened. He said, "Kincaid." Marcus turned back to Frank. Around them in the boarding area, at least 15 passengers were watching. 3 phones were raised, not held up exactly, but angled. The small documenting gesture of people who sense they are witnessing something that will matter. Gerald Sutton had moved without realizing it a half-step closer to the podium. Sophia had not moved at all, but her eyes had not left Marcus for 30 seconds. "I am going to give you one more opportunity," Marcus said. His voice was still the same. No edge had entered it, no heat. Just the flat, patient certainty of someone reading a situation that has been confirmed. "Pull up the Nolan PNR. You have 2 minutes before this becomes something that none of us can manage." Frank looked at him for a long moment. Something flickered in Frank's expression. Not doubt, not exactly, more like the ghost of a question that arrived and was immediately suppressed by 27 years of never needing to revise a first assessment. He said, "Kincaid." 60 seconds. Marcus looked at Frank for one more beat. The look of a man who has been told something he already knew and has now adjusted his plans accordingly. He nodded once, to himself, not to Frank. Then he turned. He walked to a leather chair directly in front of the boarding podium, sat down, unzipped his backpack, and removed his laptop. He opened it. He began to type. The casual, complete return to work. The way he simply disengaged from the confrontation and went back to being a person with things to accomplish. Sent a ripple through the watching crowd that was harder to name than anger or surprise. It was closer to recognition. The recognition of someone who has seen this kind of patience before, or who understands somewhere below the surface of the moment exactly how expensive that kind of patience is to maintain. Frank marched toward him. His face was flushed. "Hey, I gave you a direction." "Kincaid." Marcus did not look up from his screen. His voice carried easily across the quiet. "You might want to wait on that." Frank stopped. He stopped because something had changed in the air of Gate B14. He could feel it before he identified it. He turned toward the boarding podium. Donna's head had turned. Her hand, which had been moving toward her terminal keyboard, had stilled. Her eyes were fixed on the desk phone. The desk phone was ringing. Not the standard electronic chirp of an internal call. Something different. Something none of them had heard in this terminal in 5 years. The emergency override line, the line hardwired directly to GTA's Global Corporate Operations Center, bypassing every layer of middle management, was ringing, and the red light above it was flashing with the insistent, urgent pulse of something that would not stop until someone picked it up. Frank stared at the flashing light. He had been shift manager at Terminal 4 for 6 years. He had heard that phone ring twice. Once during a runway fire. Once during a bomb threat. Donna reached for it slowly, the way you reach for something you are not certain you want to touch. She lifted the receiver. Her voice for the first time that evening was small. "Gate B14. Donna speaking." Marcus heard the phone ring. He did not look up from his laptop. He did not change his posture, or adjust his breathing, or allow anything in his face to reflect what he was feeling. He had known something like this would come. He had been waiting for it the way you wait for something you have prepared for. Not with hope exactly, but with the settled, practical readiness of someone who has run the scenario enough times to know the shape of it. He had been running this scenario since he was 12 years old. He was 12 the first time it happened in a way he could name. Before that, there had been other moments, smaller, less legible, the kind of thing a child absorbs without vocabulary for it. But at 12, at a regional science fair, in a hotel ballroom in Washington, D.C., he understood it for the first time with complete clarity. He had won first place in the software category. His entry was a basic predictive algorithm he had built over 4 months to optimize the bus routes in his neighborhood. A problem he had identified by watching his mother spend 40 minutes on a commute that should have taken 15. He had presented it to 3 judges, answered every question, and received the highest score in his division. The awards ceremony was in the hotel ballroom on the ground floor, and Marcus had arrived in his best clothes, a button-down shirt his grandmother had ironed 3 times that morning, dark slack shoes that had been polished the night before. A white event coordinator in a green lanyard had stopped him at the entrance to the ballroom. She had looked at him with the same expression Donna Marsh would use 7 years later, the expression of someone whose conclusion has already been reached and is simply being communicated efficiently. The youth mentorship session is on the 2nd floor, sweetheart. This level is for the senior division finalists. He had shown her his badge, his name, his division, his score. She had looked at it and said, "Let me just check with someone." She had disappeared. He had waited 11 minutes. He counted them. He counted them because counting was something to do while standing in a hotel lobby in a button-down shirt that his grandmother had ironed, holding a badge that said he had earned the right to be in the room on the other side of the door. When she came back, her apology was approximately 4 words. She stepped aside and moved on to her next task. He walked into the ballroom alone. He shook hands with adults who had not seen him standing outside the door. He accepted his award. He said the right things. He rode home in the back seat of his mother's car and looked out the window and did not tell her what had happened in the lobby because he did not want to watch her face do what he knew her face would do. He counted things after that. He arrived early. He kept records. He prepared. At 16, he was the youngest person in a software engineering summer internship at a mid-sized tech company in Palo Alto. He was also the only black teenager. In his 3rd week, he attended a client strategy meeting as a note-taker. A senior client, white mid-50s, bespoke suit, the kind of casual authority that came from never having waited 11 minutes in a hotel lobby, arrived, looked around the conference table, and said to the company's receptionist with a pleasant, slightly impatient smile, "Can someone let the engineers know we're ready to start?" Marcus was sitting at the table with his laptop open. He had been there for 20 minutes. He took notes for 2 hours. He identified in the course of those 2 hours 4 infrastructure inefficiencies in the client's internal systems that the senior engineers in the room had missed. At the end of the meeting, during the Q&A, he outlined them, clearly, specifically, with the evidence to support each one. The room went quiet in a particular way, the quiet of people recalibrating. The client, as he was leaving, had laughed, actually laughed a generous, surprised sound, and clapped Marcus on the shoulder. "Sharp kid. You should think about going into tech." Marcus had nodded. He had been building Apex Root for 8 months. He understood by 16 that the experience would repeat. He understood that it was not about any particular person, not the event coordinator with the green lanyard, not the client with the bespoke suit, not the various other versions of the same moment he had accumulated by the time he was 19. He understood that it was a pattern embedded into the ordinary operations of ordinary days, reproduced by ordinary people who had never once been required to examine what they were doing. He had stopped being surprised by it. He had not found a way to stop being tired by it. The tiredness was different from anger. Slower, more persistent, the kind of thing that settles in the bones and stays. He carried it the way you carry something you have decided to carry rather than set down because setting it down would mean accepting that it was heavier than you were. What he had built in response to 12 years of accumulated evidence was preparation. Meticulous, exhaustive, almost compulsive preparation. He arrived early. He confirmed reservations. He kept records of every booking, every confirmation number, every corporate authorization. He learned the names on the reservations and the names of the people who made them. He made sure that when the moment came, and it always came, he was the most documented person in the room. Tonight he had a valid digital boarding pass that had been scanned and confirmed green. He had a passport. He had the CEO's direct office as the booking source. He had Harrison Vega on speed dial. He had sitting in his backpack a hard drive that the airline standing between him and his flight needed more than they needed anything else in the world. He was 19. He had been preparing for this since he was 12. He heard the desk phone ring. He heard the unfamiliar urgency of it. The red light ring that Donna and Frank had heard twice in 6 years, and that Marcus had known would arrive because he had made a single phone call 17 minutes ago to the person he trusted most with a crisis. He did not look up from his screen. He typed. He waited. The phone kept ringing. He had been counting. The security contractor, Officer Kincaid, had hesitated for 30 seconds. He was a professional, not GTA staff contracted security, which meant his loyalty was to the terminal's orderly functioning rather than to Frank's ego. He was watching Frank's face for a clear, unambiguous directive, because what he was seeing in front of him was not the straightforward, unauthorized access situation he had been called for. What he was seeing was a teenager sitting calmly in a leather chair typing on a laptop while a shift manager stood over him looking less certain by the second. Frank saw Kincaid's hesitation and made the wrong call. Kincaid. Now. Kincaid stepped forward and placed his hand on Marcus's shoulder, not aggressively. Professionally, the firm but controlled contact of institutional authority completing its assigned function. Marcus set his hands flat on his laptop keyboard. He looked at the hand on his shoulder. Then he looked straight ahead, and his voice came out at the careful, deliberate volume of a person who is making sure what they say is heard by everyone in the vicinity. "I need you to take your hand off my shoulder," he said. "I am not leaving this seat, and everything that is happening right now is being documented." He did not gesture toward the phones. He did not need to. Kincaid glanced up and registered what Marcus had already registered at least a dozen passengers, watching 4 of them with devices raised or angled the collective attention of a terminal boarding area focused entirely on gate B14. Kincaid looked at Frank. His hand was still on Marcus's shoulder, but with the uncertain quality of a hand that was already reconsidering. Frank made his worst decision of the evening. He did not look at the phones. He looked at the gathered passengers and he pitched his voice to the room, the practiced, managing voice of someone who has handled disruptions before and knows how to frame them publicly. "Folks, I do apologize for the continued delay. We have an individual attempting to board with fraudulent documentation. This is a security matter and we are handling it. I want to assure our first-class passengers that we will have you boarded within the next few minutes." He looked at Marcus. "Last chance, son." At the edge of the crowd, Gerald Sutton stepped forward slightly. He said, "Can you just get this sorted? Some of us have international meetings in the morning." He said it to Frank, not to Marcus. He did not look at Marcus when he said it. 2 passengers nearby filmed the moment Gerald spoke. They captured his face, his suit, his complete failure to look at the person he was talking about. Sophia had been standing at the edge of the podium since Donna sent her to the secondary scanner. She had not gone to the secondary scanner. She had stood, and she had watched, and she had held her tablet against her chest, and she had had the internal argument that people have when they know what the right thing is and are trying to calculate what it will cost them. She was 26. She had been at this job for 8 months. She had a lease and a car payment and a mother who asked about her job security every time they talked on the phone. She was also at her core constitutionally incapable of watching a clear wrong proceed unchallenged when she had the information to stop it. She stepped away from the wall. She walked to the podium terminal, not Donna's position, her own secondary login, and she pulled up the full passenger manifest. She read it once. She read the booking notation twice. Then she turned to Frank, and she said it at a volume that the passengers nearest the podium could hear clearly. Frank. His name is Marcus Webb, Seat 2, a first-class Diamond Elite. The booking notation reads, Executive clearance through the Nolan portal. He is exactly who he says he is. His boarding pass scanned green. Donna voided it manually after the system confirmed it. The silence that followed lasted approximately 2 seconds. Donna turned to Frank. Her voice was low, controlled, the voice of a person managing a subordinate who has stepped out of line. Sophia has been here 8 months. She doesn't have the context to understand the fraud protocols. Frank, this is exactly the kind of secondary confirmation attempt these situations involve. Then to Sophia, quieter. You're on the secondary gate. Please. Sophia did not move. She looked at Donna. Then she looked at Marcus. I'm sorry, she said. To Marcus, not loudly, just to him directly, the clean, uncomplicated apology of someone who is telling the truth about what they know. Your booking is valid. You should be on that plane. Marcus looked at her. Something in his face. Not softening exactly, but acknowledging. Thank you, he said. 2 words, no performance attached to them. Sophia took 1 step back. She did not go to the secondary gate. She remained where she could see everything, her tablet in her arms, her expression, the expression of someone who has made their decision and is now prepared to live with it. Frank's jaw was tight. He was aware that the situation had moved past the point where posture and volume could resolve it. He was aware of the phones in the crowd and Sophia's statement and the green confirmation that Donna had manually overridden. He was not yet aware of how comprehensively wrong he was, but something in his body, some animal awareness of shifting terrain, was beginning to register it. He ordered Kincaid to remove Marcus from the terminal. Kincaid moved. He reached for Marcus's arm. Marcus stood up before the hand arrived. He set his laptop on the chair beside him. He straightened to his full height, and he turned to Frank, and what he said next, he said at a volume and with a clarity that left nothing ambiguous for anyone within 20 feet of Gate B14. My name is Marcus Webb. I am the co-founder and lead architect of Apex Route. I have a signed consulting agreement with GTA, authorized by Arthur Nolan, the CEO of this airline, accessible in my email right now. The flight you are about to let leave without me is approximately 4 hours from a closing in London that represents a $4.2 billion acquisition. If I do not board that aircraft, the deal collapses. If the deal collapses, GTA files for bankruptcy protection before the end of the fiscal quarter. 47,000 employees lose their jobs. I am telling you this because it is true, and because I have given you multiple opportunities to verify it, and because what happens next is entirely the product of the choices you have made in the last 20 minutes. Starting with you, Frank. The terminal was quiet, not politely quiet. Absolutely quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when a crowd of people who have been performing disinterest realize simultaneously that they have been witnessing something they will be asked about later. Gerald Sutton had stopped moving entirely. His briefcase was at his side, and his mouth was slightly open, and he was looking at Marcus with the expression of someone whose calculator has just produced a number they did not expect. Frank broke the silence with a laugh. He aimed it at the room because the room was what he had left. 47,000 jobs, resting on a kid in a Howard hoodie. He shook his head. That is genuinely something. Kincaid. Okay, Marcus said. The word was very quiet. It was the sound of a decision being finalized. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out his phone. He dialed a number he had in his contacts under a single name, Harrison. He put the phone to his ear. When Harrison Vega answered, Marcus's voice was the calmest thing in the terminal. Harrison. It's Marcus. I need you to call Nolan directly, his personal cell. They voided my ticket, and they're trying to remove me from the sterile zone. Get him on the line. Harrison's response was audible to everyone near Marcus. A pause, and then Marcus. Are you serious right now? Another pause. Don't move. Sit back down. I'm calling Nolan's personal cell right now. Stay on the line. Marcus sat back down. He opened his laptop. He typed. Kincaid looked at Frank. Frank looked at Donna. Donna looked at her terminal, whose screen still displayed in unambiguous red letters, "Passenger offloaded." The three of them stood in the silence of people who have committed to a direction and are beginning to understand at a cellular level that the ground beneath it is not solid. The desk phone rang. Not the standard ring. The other one. The one with the red light. Before Donna's hand reached that receiver, before the next 14 minutes began their irreversible course, there is something worth sitting with for a moment. Have you ever had to stay completely calm in a situation that deserved every ounce of outrage you possessed? Have you ever had to swallow the fury and choose precision instead? Not because the fury was wrong, but because precision was the only thing that would actually work. If you have, you know exactly what Marcus Webb was doing in that leather chair. And if you haven't, I want you to watch what happens next very carefully, because it is going to show you something about the difference between power and authority. Authority is what Frank and Donna had. Power is what Marcus had. They are not the same thing. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done in his position. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because what is about to happen on the other end of that phone line is exactly why stories like this need to be told. Donna was about to learn something she had spent 27 years avoiding, that the world she had built in her mind had always been at its foundation a fiction. And fiction, when it finally meets reality, does not negotiate. Among the gate agents who had worked Terminal 4 for more than 5 years, the emergency override line had a name that nobody used in front of supervisors. The God Phone. It was hardwired directly to GTA's Global Corporate Operations Center, a dedicated channel that bypassed every layer of management between the gate and the executive suite. It did not ring for scheduling conflicts or minor security incidents or passenger complaints. It rang for the things that could not wait for the ordinary chain of command to process them, the category of events that required someone at the highest level of the organization to know immediately what was happening on the ground. In Terminal 4, it had rung twice in 8 years, once during a runway fire at an adjacent gate, once during a credible bomb threat in the international check-in hall. Both times the agent who answered it had described the experience the same way afterward. It felt like picking up something that weighed more than it should have. Donna had been at Gate B14 for 3 years. She had never heard it ring here. Not once. She picked it up the way you pick up something you are not certain you want to touch. The receiver was in her hand. The terminal was quiet. Behind her, Frank had not moved. Kincaid had taken a full step back from Marcus's chair. Sophia was watching from the edge of the podium. At least 20 passengers were watching from the boarding area, phones lowered, attention undivided. Gate B14. Donna speaking. The silence on the other end lasted 2 full seconds, long enough to hear the faint hissing quality of a satellite connection spanning the Atlantic. Then a voice, clipped, British, the voice of a person who had spent 30 years making consequential decisions in large organizations and had arrived through that experience at a particular kind of controlled precision, the precision of someone who is very angry and has decided that the most effective expression of that anger is absolute clarity. Donna Marsh, Employee ID 3814. Am I speaking with the gate agent who voided the executive PNR on passenger Marcus Webb seat? 2A Flight 882. Donna's stomach moved. Not metaphorically. She felt it physically, the internal drop of a body registering something the mind was still processing. Yes, she said. That's me. We had a security concern with the documentation. The system showed a... You had an assumption, the voice said. Flat, not loud. Just final the way a closed door is final. There was no security concern. The ticket was valid. Your own terminal system scanned it and returned a green confirmation. You overrode a confirmed clearance and manually voided an executive-level booking. I want to confirm that that is what occurred. There was a corporate booking without a corresponding card, and Is that what occurred? Donna. A pause. Yes. I need your shift manager on this line. Now. Donna held the receiver out to Frank. Her hand was not entirely steady. Frank had been watching her face change during the conversation, and whatever he had been expecting from this call, it was not what he was reading in her expression now. He took the phone. He straightened. He assumed the posture of a man projecting authority to someone he does not yet know outranks him by approximately 8 levels. Mr. David Ashworth, Executive Vice President, Global Operations, calling from the CEO's suite in London. You are Frank Hollister, Terminal 4 Shift Manager. That's right. Mr. Ashworth, look, I know the emergency line is reserved for serious situations, but I want to assure you that my agent handled this exactly according to protocol. We had a passenger claiming a corporate booking without the... Stop speaking. The 2 words arrived without inflection. Just the complete categorical instruction to cease. Frank stopped. You will listen, Ashworth said. 4 minutes ago, an automated alert flagged a catastrophic manual override of a Level 1 executive PNR in your terminal. The ticket that was voided belongs to Marcus Webb, a name I am going to need you to recognize because, Mr. Webb is the sole architect of the software system that this airline's survival depends on. He is carrying encryption keys without which a $4.2 billion acquisition cannot close. Arthur Nolan has spent the last 36 hours coordinating the London closing. He is now going to speak with you directly. A click. A transfer. Frank's hand tightened on the receiver. The voice that followed was not Ashworth's. It was quieter. Older. The voice of a man in his late 60s who had built an airline over 4 decades and was now at 4 a.m. London time, sitting in a hotel suite in Mayfair, watching the instrument of its rescue be dismantled by a gate agent's assumption. Arthur Nolan did not raise his voice. People who have genuine authority rarely need to. He spoke at the volume of a doctor delivering a diagnosis, measured certain and leaving no room for alternative interpretations. Frank, is Marcus Webb still in the terminal? Frank swallowed. Yes, sir. He's in the boarding area. Good. Here is what is going to happen. That aircraft does not move from the gate until Marcus Webb is in seat 2A with a drink in his hand. That is the only acceptable outcome of this conversation. You are going to reinstate his ticket. You are going to walk across that terminal, and you are going to apologize to him, genuinely, not professionally, and you are going to ask him to board. Do you understand me, Mr. Nolan? When Donna voided the ticket, there's a fraud flag protocol that... Frank, the single word, quiet as a door closing on a conversation. You have 8 minutes before the crew times out and the flight cannot legally depart. Fix it. The line went dead. Frank lowered the phone. He missed the cradle twice before setting it down. He stood with both hands on the counter, and he did not speak for approximately 5 seconds, which was long enough for Donna watching his face to understand what had happened without being told. What did they say, she said. Her voice had lost its professional quality. It was just a voice now, the voice of someone who needed information. Frank looked at her. He said, You need to reinstate his ticket, right now. We have 8 minutes. Donna turned to her terminal. Her fingers moved quickly. Too quickly, the frantic typing of someone trying to outrun a clock. She entered Marcus's name, his seat number, the original PNR locator. She hit enter. The screen returned a red error box. Error. Passenger profile. Hard band. Fraud alert. Level 3. Manual override disabled. Donna stared at it. She typed again. The same result. She tried the PNR directly. The same result. The Level 3 fraud lock she had triggered when she checked the fraud flag box had closed around Marcus's profile like a vault. It did not respond to standard gate agent credentials. It did not respond to Frank's shift manager override. It required, according to the small text beneath the error message, an IT administration clearance, a service ticket processed through GTA's central IT department. Standard resolution time 6 to 8 hours. The flight left in 7 minutes, Frank Donna said. Her voice had the quality of someone reporting a disaster they have caused. I can't undo it. When I flagged it as a Level 3, it locked. I don't have the clearance to reverse it. It takes hours. Frank looked at the screen. He looked at the clock above the terminal. He looked at Marcus, who was sitting in his leather chair 10 feet away, typing on his laptop, apparently entirely untroubled by the institutional machinery currently failing to resolve the situation he was at the center of. The man who could fix the system was sitting 10 feet away, and he was the one they had spent the last 30 minutes trying to remove from the building. In the boarding area, a woman near the back of the crowd said quietly to the person next to her, "He wrote the software they're using to lock him out." She was not certain of this, but she was more right than she knew. Gerald Sutton heard her say it. He went very still. Frank straightened his jacket. He smoothed it down the front with both palms. He turned toward Marcus. He began to walk. It was the longest walk he had taken in 6 years of managing Terminal 4. Longer than the distance, longer than the 8 seconds it took to cover it. He arrived at the leather chair, where Marcus was typing, and he stood there for a moment, and Marcus did not look up, and the clacking of the keyboard was the only sound between them. "Mr. Webb," Frank said. Marcus hit the space bar. He looked up. His face was composed, unreadable, exactly as it had been for the last 40 minutes. "You called me son," he said. "And before that, bud. Mr. Webb is fine." Frank closed his eyes for a brief half-second. Then he opened them. "Mr. Webb," he said again, and this time the name came out with the effortful care of a man who is learning to say something correctly for the first time. "There has been We've spoken with corporate. We understand now that your booking was entirely legitimate, and we are—" "It was not a misunderstanding," Marcus said. The words were quiet and precise and aimed with the accuracy of someone who has been choosing them for 20 minutes. Donna scanned my ticket. The system returned green. She voided it anyway. "She called me fraudulent in front of this terminal. You backed her without reviewing the record. You ordered a security officer to physically remove me from a federal sterile zone. Those are not the components of a misunderstanding. They are a sequence of decisions. Voluntary decisions. Every one of them." He said it at conversational volume. Every passenger within 15 feet heard every word. Frank had no answer for it. He stood there with the expression of a man who has arrived at the end of a calculation he ran incorrectly, holding the wrong answer, with no mechanism for revising it. Behind Frank, Donna had followed. She stood at the edge of the chair cluster, her hands clasped in front of her, her posture entirely unlike the posture she had carried for the last 40 minutes. "She said, Mr. Carter, I was following the security." Webb, Marcus said without looking at her. Then looking at her, and the system said Green Donna. She closed her mouth. Frank said, his voice dropping to something close to pleading, "Mr. Webb." "The CEO. Arthur Nolan is holding the plane for you. We have maybe 7 minutes before the crew times out. We need you to board. We want to reinstate your ticket, but the system, when Donna flagged it, it triggered a Level 3 lock and we can't." "I know what a Level 3 lock is," Marcus said. He reached for his phone. He dialed Harrison Vega. He put the phone on speaker. Harrison answered before the second ring. His voice was the voice of a man who had been sitting in an office chair for the past 20 minutes in a state of controlled professional fury. The kind that does not pace or raise its volume but sits absolutely still and waits for the moment it can act. "Marcus, talk to me. The gate terminal is locked on a level 3 fraud flag. Donna Marsh triggered it when she voided my ticket. I need you to relay my terms to Nolan before I use the admin bypass." A half-second pause. "Terms. Okay. Give them to me." Marcus looked at Frank. He looked at Donna. He looked briefly at the gathering of passengers who had not moved from their positions around Gate B14 despite the fact that boarding had not been called in 20 minutes. He spoke clearly at the volume of someone making a public record of a private decision. 1. The acquisition price increases by $50 million. It is logged as a contractual inconvenience adjustment, not a renegotiation. 2. Donna Marsh and Frank Hollister are terminated effective the moment my feet are on the jet bridge, not suspended, terminated. 3. Sophia Reyes receives a formal written commendation. Her employment review reflects tonight accurately, including the fact that she identified the error and was overruled. 4. GTA commissions. Apex Routes Equity Division to conduct a bias training audit of all North American terminals. GTA funds it. We deliver it. Frank's mouth opened. He said, "Now wait." Marcus looked at him. Just looked at him. The way you look at something you have already accounted for. "You called me son," Marcus said quietly. "You told your security officer to grab me. You stood behind a woman who voided a green confirmation and called me fraudulent in front of a terminal full of witnesses. These are not punishments, Frank. They are consequences. They are the direct proportional results of what you chose to do tonight. I did not assign them to you. You assigned them to yourself." Frank said nothing. Gerald Sutton, who had moved closer to the boarding area during the previous exchange, was standing now at the edge of the cluster of passengers close enough to hear every word of the speaker call. His briefcase was at his feet. He had set it down without noticing. Harrison's voice came through the speaker. "Marcus, I've got Nolan on the other line. He's reading the terms." A pause. 15 seconds, 20. The kind of silence that contains a decision being made. Then Harrison. All 4 terms. Accepted. In writing. He's executing the amendment from London right now. He says, his words, "Tell Marcus I am sorry, and I mean that, and I will spend however long necessary proving it. Unlock the terminal when you're ready." "Thank you, Harrison." Marcus ended the call. He looked at Frank. He looked at Donna. Then he looked at Gerald Sutton, who was standing at the edge of the crowd with an expression that had been changing for the last several minutes, shifting from the vague approving detachment he had worn when he first arrived in line to something harder to categorize, something that looked at its edges like recognition. "Excuse me," Gerald said. He stepped forward. He cleared his throat. He looked at Marcus with the direct, careful attention of someone who is about to do something uncomfortable and knows it needs to be done correctly. "Marcus Webb," he said. "Not a question. Apex Route." Marcus looked at him, gave a single, even nod. "Gerald Sutton, Montgomery Sutton Capital." A pause. "My firm is the primary underwriter for the GTA Apex Route acquisition." Marcus said nothing. Gerald looked at his shoes briefly. Then he looked up. "I owe you an apology. I made a comment earlier about getting things sorted. I said it to Frank and I said it about you, and I did not look at you when I said it. I want to be direct about what that was. I looked at your clothing and your age, and I decided before I had heard a single word from you what kind of person you were. I was wrong. Not because of who you turned out to be, because of the thing I did before I knew." He said it plainly without performance, the way people say difficult things when they have decided to say them honestly rather than strategically. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "I know what you said. I heard it." He let that land. "The problem is not that you didn't know who I was, Gerald. The problem is that not knowing should not have been the prerequisite for basic respect. Finding out that my algorithm pays your firm's dividends does not fix the calculation you made when you saw me in this lane. It just changes the consequence of it." Gerald held his gaze. He did not look away. He nodded once slowly, the nod of a man absorbing something that is going to stay with him. "You're right," he said. That was all. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not offer his business card. Behind Marcus, someone in the crowd, an older man in a gray jacket who had been watching the entire sequence from the third row of the boarding area, said audibly, "Someone needed to say that." A woman nearby murmured agreement. The crowd had the quality now of people who had been witnesses to something they knew they would remember. Sophia stepped forward. She had been waiting tablet in hand since the phone call began. She looked at Marcus. "I pulled your full booking confirmation the moment Donna sent me to the secondary scanner. The Nolan portal authorization, the Diamond Elite override, the executive clearance notation. I sent the complete record to GTA's corporate compliance inbox at 10:53 p.m. There is a time-stamped submission on file." She looked at him steadily. "I should have said it louder the first time." Marcus looked at her. Something in his face. Not softening, but the specific quality of someone who recognizes what an honest thing costs to say. "You said it when you could," he said. "Under conditions designed to make you stay quiet. That matters." Sophia nodded. Her eyes were bright, but her voice was steady. "Thank you for saying that." Frank had not spoken in 2 minutes. He was standing with both hands at his sides and the expression of a man who has watched the entire structure of his professional evening collapse from the inside out, and who does not yet know what to do with his hands now that there is nothing left to manage. Donna was looking at the floor. "Mr. Webb," Frank said. His voice was stripped of everything that had been in it 40 minutes ago. The authority, the certainty, the performative patience of someone who had never been wrong in front of a crowd. What was left was just a man, 51 years old, with a mortgage and 2 kids, and the dawning understanding of exactly what he had done tonight. "Is there—" "The system lock. Is there a way—" "Yes," Marcus said. He picked up his phone. He opened an application that was not visible in the App Store, not publicly documented, not accessible to anyone without administrative credentials issued by Apex Roots systems team. He navigated 3 menus. He looked at Frank. "Step back from the terminal." Frank stepped back. Marcus tapped 3 buttons on the administrator application. The gate terminal at gate B14, 10 feet away behind the podium where Donna was standing, emitted a soft, clear chime, the sound of something resolving. The red error screen that had been occupying the display for the past 11 minutes dissolved. The display returned to its standard interface, and then it resolved further into the clean, unambiguous green of a cleared boarding confirmation, Webby Marcus. Seat 2, A, First Class, Diamond Elite. Cleared to board. The passengers nearest the podium could see the screen from where they stood. A woman near the front of the crowd said quietly, "Oh." Not dramatically, just the single syllable of someone watching something click into place. Marcus put his phone in his pocket. He closed his laptop. He slid it into his backpack. He checked the carabiner on the broken zipper, still holding, and he stood up and he shouldered the bag with the same unhurried motion he had used when he stood up from the gate seating 40 minutes ago before any of this had happened, when it was still just a flight he wanted to get on and sleep through. He looked at Sophia. "I want you to know," he said, "that the commendation in your file is not a formality. What you did tonight, saying the true thing in a situation designed to make the true thing expensive, that is exactly the kind of thing that matters. Thank you." Sophia pressed her lips together for a moment. She nodded. She trusted herself to nod, but not quite to speak. Marcus looked at Gerald Sutton. "I'll see you at the signing." Not warmly, not coldly. The flat, factual statement of a professional addressing a colleague across a table of shared business. Gerald nodded. He was not the same man he had been when he got in line 40 minutes ago, and they both knew it, and neither of them needed to say so. Marcus did not look at Frank. He did not look at Donna. He walked to the boarding podium. He held up his phone. The scanner read the QR code. The terminal emitted its cheerful single-note confirmation beep. The screen updated boarding. Flight 882, Seat 2A. "Welcome, Mr. Webb." He walked through. The jet bridge carpet was deep blue, slightly worn in the center strip where thousands of feet had passed. The angle of descent was gradual, the walls close enough on either side to make the passage feel private. The noise of the terminal fell away behind him. Ahead, the hum of the aircraft. Deep, steady, mechanical, the sound of a machine prepared to do what it was built to do. Behind him, in Gate B-1-4, the silence lasted for approximately 4 seconds. Then one person clapped. Slowly, deliberately. Not the automatic applause of a crowd doing what crowds do, but the considered intentional sound of one person deciding to mark something. Then a second person. Then several more, until the sound filled the boarding area with the steady, purposeful rhythm of people who had witnessed something that needed witnessing and wanted to say so. Marcus did not hear it. He had turned the corner of the jet bridge. He was already on his way to the aircraft door where Carmen Fuentes was waiting. Carmen had been briefed 3 minutes ago by a direct call from GTA's Director of Customer Relations, who had been patched through from Arthur Nolan's suite in London. She had also, in the 3 minutes since that call, been watching the last 30 seconds of Owen Park's live stream on her phone. Owen was a Korean-American travel writer who had been sitting in the premium boarding area since the confrontation began filming, with the calm, documenting eye of a person who understood that what he was watching was not just a gate dispute. Carmen put her phone away. She straightened her uniform. She stood at the aircraft door. When the Howard hoodie came around the bend, she stepped aside, and her voice was the voice of someone who meant every word of what they were about to say. "Mr. Webb, welcome aboard Flight 882. We are very glad you're here. No apology by proxy. No institutional compensation disguised as hospitality. Just a genuine statement from one person to another." "Thank you, Carmen," Marcus said. "It's been a long night. I just need some quiet." "Of course," she said. "Seat 2A is ready. I'll close the privacy screen the moment you'd like." He stepped through the door and into the first-class cabin. Seat 2A was everything that had been promised on the boarding pass: hand-stitched leather, warm amber lighting a clean cotton pillow at the headrest. He tossed his backpack, the canvas bag with the carabiner and the broken zipper and the $4.2 billion hard drive, onto the plush ottoman. He sat down. He pulled his knees up slightly. He leaned back against the headrest. Carmen appeared with a glass of sparkling water, a wedge of lime balanced on the rim. She set it on the tray table. She looked at him. The quiet look of someone who wants to say more but understands that what is needed right now is its opposite. She reached up and closed the privacy screen. The ambient noise of the cabin reduced to a hum. Outside the oval window, the lights of JFK spread across the dark ground. Marcus looked at them for a moment. Then he looked at the ceiling of his suite. Then he closed his eyes. He did not think about Donna or Frank or Gerald or the God phone or the red error screen or the 11 minutes he had counted at a hotel ballroom at the age of 12. He thought about the 6th iteration of the load-balancing algorithm and whether the prediction model needed another testing cycle before they could deploy to GTA's 2nd regional hub. He was asleep before the aircraft pushed back from the gate. Gerald Sutton boarded 8 minutes after Marcus as part of the general first-class flow that resumed once the gate terminal cleared and Carmen confirmed the aircraft was ready. He walked the jet bridge with his slim briefcase and his charcoal suit and the particular silence of a man who is processing something he would rather not be processing. He found his seat. 3A, directly behind Marcus's suite. He stowed his briefcase. He sat down. He looked at the closed privacy screen of seat 2A, and he sat with it for a moment. The closed screen. The fact of it, the specific thing it communicated about the person who had asked for it. He reached into his jacket pocket. His fingers found the small stack of embossed business cards he carried everywhere. Cream cardstock, his name in raised letters, the Montgomery Sutton Capital logo in the upper left corner. He had shaken hands with 700 people in the past 2 years and given one of these cards to each of them. He had never once considered whether the card was welcome. He thought about sliding one through the gap at the bottom of the privacy screen. He thought about the script. Marcus. I just wanted to formally introduce myself. I think we got off on the wrong foot. The professional phrasing that would reframe the evening as a miscommunication and allow both of them to move forward on transactional terms. He put the card back in his pocket. It was not a large gesture. It was just a man deciding not to do the convenient thing and acknowledging privately why. He looked out his window as the last of the premium passengers filed past. He saw in the forward section of the boarding flow Owen Park settling into his seat 2 rows back, still holding his phone with the particular carefulness of someone who has been documenting something important. Their eyes met briefly. Owen gave him a look that was not unfriendly and was not charitable. Just witnessing. Gerald looked away. Carmen appeared beside him with a warm towel on a porcelain tray and his pre-ordered glass of wine. He looked at the glass. He thought about whether he wanted it. He looked at the closed screen of seat 2A. "Could I just have water, please?" he said. Carmen smiled with the professional warmth of someone who had heard everything. "Of course." She reached for the glass. "Is he all right?" Gerald said. The young man in 2A. Carmen paused. She considered the question with the care it deserved. He asked for sparkling water and privacy, she said. He seemed... She chose the word with the deliberateness of someone for whom words mattered. "Settled." "Good," Gerald said. "That's good." He looked out the window as the aircraft began its slow, heavy push back from the gate. The lights of JFK shifted and organized themselves as the aircraft found its angle. He could see distantly the lit windows of Terminal 4, the concourse, the gates, the blue carpet of Gate B14 visible in the glowing rectangle of the boarding area. He thought about the moment he had stepped forward and said Marcus Webb Apex Route. The moment he had recognized the name and allowed that recognition to produce the alarm that the simple sight of a teenager in a hoodie had not produced. He turned this over carefully. He did not look away from it. He had gone forward to help. But the thing that had moved him was not the injustice. It was the calculation. He had recognized financial exposure and moved toward it. The injustice had been visible for 30 minutes before that moment. Visible to him standing second in line watching Donna handle a teenager with the practiced contempt of someone who had done this before and expected no consequences. He had seen it. He had felt the vague discomfort of it. He had shifted his weight. He had not said anything. And then he had learned the name and the discomfort had become urgency. He sat with this understanding for the duration of the pushback. He did not try to excuse it or minimize it or reframe it as something more flattering. He just held it the way you hold something uncomfortable when you have decided that the discomfort is information you need to keep. When they landed in London, he decided he was going to listen to Marcus Webb differently. Not because of the acquisition or the algorithm or the $50 million that had just moved from GTA's emergency reserve to Apex Root's escrow account. Because of the 11 seconds Marcus had waited before answering Donna's first accusation. because of the specific enormous cost of that particular patience and the way Marcus had made it look from the outside like stillness. Gerald had never been required to cultivate that kind of patience. He understood somewhere below the level of language what a different life produced it. He did not fully understand yet what to do with that understanding. But he was going to try. The aircraft lifted. The ground fell away. Gerald Sutton closed his eyes and let London come toward him in the dark. Carmen Fuentes had been a first-class purser for 11 years. She had managed medical emergencies at altitude and passenger conflicts mid-Atlantic and the particular sustained stress of transatlantic flights during which nothing went wrong but nothing went right either. She was constitutionally suited to the work. Organized, warm, precise, possessed of a natural authority that manifested not as command, but as calm. She had never received a pre-boarding call from a CEO's suite in London before tonight. The call had lasted 4 minutes. Arthur Nolan's assistant had done most of the talking. The facts, the sequence of events, the outcome, the instruction. And then Nolan himself had come on the line for 45 seconds. He had said, "His name is Marcus Webb. He is 19 years old. He is the most important passenger this aircraft has ever carried, and I am not referring to the business. Please take care of him." Carmen had said, "I understand." She had meant both meanings of it. She had spent the 3 minutes between that call and Marcus's appearance in the jet bridge making one preparation. She had dismissed the other flight attendant from the door position, taken the spot herself, and stood waiting. When the Howard hoodie rounded the bend, faded at the cuffs, the letters slightly cracked from too many washings, Carmen straightened. Not the rigid compensatory straightening of someone trying to undo damage, the natural posture of someone who understood what this moment needed and intended to provide it. "Mr. Webb," she said. She stepped aside from the door. She did not rush through a prepared statement. She said, "Welcome aboard Flight 882. We are very glad you're here." She watched him receive it, the way a genuinely calm person receives a genuine thing, without the heightened response that follows a long absence of basic courtesy. He just heard it, and it landed, and he moved through the door with the ease of someone who had been waiting to stop being somewhere difficult. "Thank you, Carmen," he said. "It's been a long night. I just need some quiet." "Of course," she said. 2A is ready. I'll close the screen whenever you'd like." She followed him to the suite, and she watched him sit. Not the careful provisional sitting of someone who is not sure they're allowed to be there, but the complete, unguarded settling of someone arriving somewhere they were always going to arrive. He dropped his backpack on the ottoman. He leaned back. The amber light of the suite caught the Howard lettering on his hoodie, the scuff on the left toe of his sneaker, the carabiner on the broken zipper of the bag that held the hard drive that had been the central object of a $4.2 billion transaction, and a 30-minute institutional crisis, and a 19-year-old's inexhaustible patience. She brought the sparkling water. "Lime on the rim." She set it on the tray table. She reached up for the privacy screen. "Thank you," he said. She closed it. She stood on the other side of the closed screen for a half-second, not listening, just marking the moment privately before moving back down the aisle to the work of the flight. She had seen a lot of passengers receive their seats in first class. She had seen relief and entitlement and exhaustion and performance. She had rarely seen what she had just seen, someone sitting down in a seat that was always theirs and letting it simply be true. In the economy cabin, Owen Park was composing his first-person account on his laptop, choosing his words with the deliberateness of a writer who understood that this particular story needed to be told accurately without the distortions of drama or outrage. He had the video. He had the audio. He had 30 minutes of direct observation. He wrote the first sentence I was standing in the priority boarding lane at gate B14 when I understood for the first time in my adult life what it actually costs to be the calmest person in the room. The aircraft's engines built to their departure pitch. The terminal lights outside the windows began to move. Marcus Webb in seat 2A with a glass of sparkling water on his tray table and a backpack on his ottoman and 3 years of his life finally headed toward the room where they would matter. Closed his eyes. He was asleep before the wheels left the ground. Patricia Owens had driven to JFK from her apartment in Astoria in 22 minutes, which was 11 minutes faster than the route should have taken because she had spent the entire drive in the particular focused state of a person who has been pulled out of a Tuesday evening by a call from a CEO's suite in London and has decided to treat the interruption with the seriousness it deserves. She was 48, Regional HR Director for GTA's Northeast Operations, and she had spent the drive being briefed by David Ashworth's assistant on the sequence of events at Gate B14. By the time she parked, she had a clear, complete picture of what had happened. By the time she walked through the terminal entrance, she had made every decision she needed to make. The walk to Gate B14 was not a deliberation. It was an execution. She was wearing a sharp navy blazer over a white shirt, not her work uniform, just what she had been wearing when the phone rang at her dinner table. No GTA lanyard, no corporate badge visible. The credentials she needed were in her bag and on her phone, and the authority she carried had nothing to do with what was around her neck. She came around the corner to gate B14 and she took in the scene in approximately 3 seconds. Donna was sitting behind the podium, not working. Sitting. Her eyes were fixed on the middle distance. The terminal screen, which still showed Marcus's green departure confirmation, the aircraft now pushing back on the tarmac feed. Her neck scarf was slightly off-center. Her burgundy lipstick had not been reapplied. Frank was standing at the window. His back was mostly to the room. He was watching the aircraft taxi, the same aircraft he had spent 30 minutes trying to keep Marcus off of, with the expression of a man watching something move away from him that is not going to come back. Sophia was at the secondary scanner working. She was the only person at gate B14 who was doing anything that the gate was actually for. She had the quiet, focused efficiency of someone who has passed through a crisis and emerged on the other side still functional. Patricia stopped in front of Frank first. She said her name and her title. She said it once at the volume of a person who does not need to repeat themselves. Frank turned from the window, from "I'm going to need your security badge, your terminal access key, and your GTA-issued communication device. Please have them ready." Frank straightened. Some old instinct toward authority reasserted itself for a moment, and he said, "I think there are 2 sides to what—" Patricia waited. She waited for exactly 10 seconds, which was approximately the time it took for Frank to hear himself and understand that the clause he was building had no viable ending. "Frank," she said when he stopped. Arthur Nolan was on the emergency line during the incident. David Ashworth has a recording of the entire call. I have written documentation from a gate agent filed through corporate compliance at 10:53 p.m. 4 passenger recorded videos already submitted to our legal team and a formal complaint from an executive-level contracted partner. There are not 2 sides. There is what happened. Frank put his badge on the counter, his terminal key, his company phone. He set them down one at a time, and each one landed with the specific irreversible sound of a thing being relinquished. Patricia turned to Donna. Donna had stood up from behind the podium. She was standing with her hands clasped in front of her, her posture the last remnant of the professional manner she had carried for 27 years. Not quite upright, not quite collapsed, the posture of a person holding a shape that no longer has anything inside it. She removed her lanyard. She held it for a moment. Then she set it on the counter next to Frank's badge. 27 years, she said. It was not a defense. It was not an appeal. It was just the only information she had left that felt like it meant something. Patricia looked at her. "I know," she said. Then she picked up the badge. She turned to Sophia. Sophia looked up from her tablet. She had been expecting this, not dreading it. not particularly, just expecting it in the way you expect the part of a difficult evening where someone finally comes to officially mark what happened. Ms. Reyes, Patricia said, "Your compliance submission has been received and reviewed. Your employment record will reflect tonight accurately, including a formal commendation for adherence to anti-discrimination policy under significant direct pressure. I also want to tell you separately from the official record what you did tonight was the right thing in a situation specifically designed to make the right thing feel impossible. I want to make sure someone said that to you directly." Sophia held her gaze. "Thank you," she said. She meant it simply. "Are you all right?" Patricia asked. Sophia thought about it for a real moment the way the question deserved. "Yes," she said. "I am." Patricia nodded. Then she turned to Officer Kincaid, who had been standing near the window, hands at his sides, since Frank stepped away from it. He had received his own briefing from the security contractor's supervisor 14 minutes ago. He knew what came next. He walked Donna and Frank out of the sterile zone and down the concourse of Terminal 4 with the quiet, professional efficiency of someone who had been on the wrong side of this situation an hour ago and was now without ceremony on the right one. He did not say anything to them. He did not need to. The passengers moving through the concourse slowed their pace as the three of them passed. The two former gate agents, stripped of their badges, carrying their personal belongings, walking the long-lit corridor toward the terminal exit. Some of them had been at Gate B14 earlier. Some of them had been in the boarding line. Some of them had filmed. None of them said anything. The silence of a crowd that has already witnessed what it needed to witness is different from ordinary silence. It has weight. Frank walked with his chin down. Donna walked with her neck scarf perfectly aligned and her lipstick still slightly faded, and the ramrod posture of someone maintaining form in the absence of everything else. It was the last thing she had. They went through the terminal doors. The fluorescent light of the concourse gave way to the automatic doors, and then to the cold night air of the departures level, and then they were gone. Gate B14 was quiet. Sophia sat at the primary podium, not Donna's position on the left, but the center seat, the one that faced the tarmac directly. She opened her tablet. She pulled up the queue for the next departure. She could see through the floor-to-ceiling windows the lights of Flight 882 moving on the taxiway, the slow, heavy progress of a fully loaded 777 finding its runway. She watched until the landing lights lifted from the ground and climbed into the dark above JFK until they became just another set of moving points among the many visible from a terminal window on a Tuesday night. Then she looked back at her tablet. She had work to do. She did it. The wheels touched Heathrow at 10:48 a.m. local time. Marcus had been awake for 40 minutes before the landing. Not anxiously. He had slept for most of the flight, the deep, untroubled sleep of someone who had completed an extremely demanding task and could finally stop. He woke somewhere over Wales in the gray Atlantic light, and he had spent the remaining time looking out the oval window at the approaching English countryside. The patchwork fields, the motorways, the early morning cloud cover that pressed down over London like a ceiling. He folded the blanket. He finished the last half-inch of his sparkling water. Still cold, the lime slice long since retired to the side of the glass. He looked at his reflection in the dark window. Howard hoodie, same as always. Scuff on the left shoe, same as always. He did not try to look like anything other than what he was. He never had. Carmen opened the privacy screen at 10:51. Her smile was genuine and rested. The smile of someone who had done her job well and was happy about it. "Good morning, Mr. Webb. Welcome to London." She offered a warm towel on a porcelain tray. "I trust you were able to rest." "I slept perfectly," Marcus said. "Thank you, Carmen, for all of it." She nodded. "A private car is waiting on the executive stand. We've held the cabin. You can disembark first." He slung his backpack. He walked up the aisle and through the forward door and out onto the executive stairs, and the cold, damp London morning hit him immediately. That particular London cold that comes with moisture in it, the kind that gets into your jacket regardless of the material. He breathed it in. He walked down the stairs. At the bottom on the wet concrete of the executive stand, Arthur Nolan was waiting. He was in his late 60s, tall in a dark overcoat. He had the look of a man who had not slept in 2 days because he had not slept in 2 days and who was not trying to hide it. His shoulders were carrying something. Relief. Marcus recognized it, the specific physical quality of relief in a person who has been holding a very large thing and has just been allowed to set it down. He stepped forward when Marcus reached the bottom step. He extended both hands, not for a handshake exactly, but the double-handed grip of someone trying to communicate something that a single handshake cannot carry. "Marcus," he said, "I owe you an apology. What happened at that gate was a failure of my airline in every way I know how to measure it. I am not going to tell you it was an anomaly because I don't believe anomalies are possible in an organization that hasn't built the structures to prevent them. We failed you. I'm sorry." Marcus shook his hand. He looked at the man. He did not offer the apology easy passage. He let it land and sit for a moment. "The $50 million goes to the equity initiative," Marcus said. "First phase is 10 airports. GTA's North American terminals lead the rollout. Harrison has the implementation timeline." "I know," Arthur said. "I've already signed the amendment. The board approved it 40 minutes ago." He exhaled. "Harrison said you'd say that first." Something close to a smile moved across Marcus's face. "He knows me." They got into the car together. The drive to Mayfair was mostly quiet, the settled quiet of two people who have already said the essential things and are now simply in motion toward the work. Marcus looked out the rain-streaked window at London moving past the motorway giving way to the North Circular. The North Circular giving way to streets that got narrower and older and more expensive until they reached Mayfair and the glass-fronted building where GTA's London executive offices occupied the top 3 floors. The boardroom was everything boardrooms are when something important is actually happening in them, bright, charged, full of people in expensive clothing who were waiting for one person in a Howard hoodie to sit down. Marcus sat at the head of the table because that was where Arthur directed him. He set his backpack on the chair beside him. He produced the hard drive. He produced the integration documentation. He answered 3 technical questions from 2 engineers who had flown in from GTA's Dublin infrastructure team. Then he signed the acquisition agreement. 3 places. His handwriting was small and clear. The pen went down. Someone in the room exhaled audibly. Someone else said quietly, "That's done." Gerald Sutton, sitting across the table, looked at Marcus with an expression that was not quite the expression he had worn in the priority boarding lane at Gate B14, and not quite the expression he had worn when he stepped forward and said the name. It was something newer, less certain, more honest. Marcus looked at him briefly. He did not nod or smile. He simply acknowledged the look and moved on. Arthur Nolan stood at the window afterward, looking out at the Thames, the gray moving river in the gray moving morning. Marcus stood beside him for a moment, his backpack over his shoulder. The hard drive now delivered the deal, now closed the 3 years of his life, now part of something larger than either of them. "You know," Arthur said quietly to the window, "I flew commercial my whole career. No one ever stopped me at a gate." Marcus looked at the river. "I know," he said. Then he picked up his backpack and walked toward the door, and everything the backpack had carried, everything it represented, walked with him into the rest of what he was going to build. 2 weeks after the signing, Global Transcontinental Airlines published a public statement. It was not the kind of statement that public relations teams write when they want to contain a story. It was the kind of statement that gets written when someone in the executive suite has decided that containment is not the goal. It named what had happened at Gate B14 by name, racial profiling, without euphemism and without the softening language of institutional self-protection. It acknowledged that a passenger had been wrongly accused, physically obstructed, and subjected to treatment that the airline described as a direct violation of its stated values and its legal obligations. It announced the partnership with Apex Route's Equity Division for a bias training audit across all North American terminals. It announced a revised discrimination complaint protocol, one that routed bias reports directly to regional HR rather than through shift managers, developed in consultation with frontline staff. It was in the language of people who watched these statements for a living unusually direct. Sophia Reyes was promoted 30 days after the incident. Not to Donna's former position, that role was eliminated as part of the terminal restructuring that followed the audit announcement. Her new title was Passenger Advocacy Coordinator Terminal 4. It was a newly created role, and she had a hand in writing the job description, which was its own kind of satisfaction. Her first project was the revised complaint protocol she had helped design, the one that made it impossible for a shift manager to unilaterally dismiss a bias report from a gate agent. She built it with input from 3 other junior staff who had been watching the same patterns for years and had never had a formal mechanism for addressing them. She did not need Marcus's name to do the work. She was grateful for the night she had finally stopped staying quiet. Owen Park's first-person account was published 3 days after the flight. He had written it carefully with the precision of someone who knew that the thing he was describing was not a story about an airline. It was a story about a 19-year-old who had been required to be the most prepared, the most documented, the most controlled person in a room where he should have been able to be just a passenger. Owen did not editorialize. He did not need to. He reported what he had seen, and what he had seen said everything. The piece was shared widely in aviation and business circles. 3 other major carriers issued internal policy reviews in the month that followed. None of them publicly cited the reason. Everyone in the industry understood. Gerald Sutton sent Marcus a letter, not an email, a letter handwritten on Montgomery Sutton Capital stationery, in the slightly stiff script of someone whose handwriting has been formed by a career of typed communication. He wrote, "You were right. I was wrong before I knew who you were. I have been thinking about what that means, and I don't have a tidy conclusion. I just wanted you to know that I understood what you said, and I have not stopped thinking about it." He did not ask for a response. He did not attach a business card. Marcus read the letter once. He folded it and put it in the drawer of his desk in the Apex Route San Francisco office next to the documentation from the deal closing and a photograph of himself and Daniel Park from the week they registered the company. He did not write back. He thought about it for 2 days and decided that what Gerald had written was complete on its own and that adding to it would not improve it. 3 months after Flight 882, Marcus was at JFK again. Different terminal, different gate, a connector flight to Dallas for a maintenance infrastructure consultation. He arrived 40 minutes early. He sat in a plastic chair near the gate window. He put his headphones around his neck. He opened his laptop. He began to type. No one approached him. No one questioned his seat. The pre-boarding announcement came through the speakers, and he closed his laptop, and he stood up and he walked to the priority lane, and he held out his phone, and the scanner beeped and the screen went green, and he boarded. It was a completely ordinary Tuesday. That was the point. That was what all of it had been for. Not the 47,000 jobs, not the $4.2 billion acquisition, not the wide reach of Owen Park's article, or the policy changes at 3 unnamed carriers. Those things mattered. But what Marcus Webb had wanted for as long as he had been flying was ordinary Tuesdays. The right to be unremarkable, the right to be a passenger. His sparkling water, lime no lemon on the tray table at his right, stayed cold for the entire flight. He arrived on time. 4 months after Flight 882, Donna Marsh sat in a small office at Newark Liberty International Airport and waited for a hiring manager named Thomas Avery to run her credentials through a background database. The office was the kind of space that exists in every airport in the world, and in none of the parts that passengers see fluorescent lighting, a potted plant that had been overwatered once and underwatered ever since a desk with a monitor and a printed form and a pen in a cup. Thomas was 29 and enthusiastic and had been genuinely impressed by Donna's resume before the database ran. 27 years at GT, 6 different operational roles, 12 customer satisfaction awards, specialist certification in international boarding procedures, he had said with the warm, direct sincerity of someone who was not performing it. That's remarkable. We almost never see tenure like that anymore. Donna had allowed herself a small, practiced smile. She had crossed her legs. She had said, "I pride myself on maintaining standards." She had been preparing for this interview for 3 weeks. Since her termination, she had applied to 9 airline positions. 7 had not responded. 2 had declined at the application stage with the standard language of organizations that do not explain their rejections. Atlantic Horizon Airways at Newark was the first callback she had received, and she had spent the night before in front of her bathroom mirror rehearsing her answers with the focused preparation of someone who did not understand that the preparation was beside the point. Thomas turned to his monitor. "I just need to run your profile through the new unified personnel database. All the major North American and European carriers adopted it last quarter. It integrates background checks, conduct records, and security clearances across the consortium. Should only take a moment." He typed her information. He clicked enter. He leaned back in his chair. The office was quiet except for the air conditioning. 2 seconds passed. 3. Thomas's expression changed. Not dramatically. The small specific change of a person who has just read something they were not expecting and who is now deciding how to proceed. He leaned forward. He read more carefully. He looked up at Donna. "Donna," he said, and his voice had dropped to the careful neutral register of someone delivering information they did not generate. "I'm getting a hard ban on your profile." A global flag. The ambient noise of the office receded. Donna heard the air conditioning and the distant sound of ground vehicles outside the window and nothing else. She felt the specific cold of a specific recognition moving up from somewhere below conscious thought. "Oh, what?" she said. "Run it again." Thomas turned the monitor so she could see it. The display was clean and precise, the architecture of it immediately familiar to anyone who had spent 3 decades in the aviation industry's digital infrastructure. And it was familiar to Donna in a more specific way than that. She knew this interface. She knew the font. She knew the error box format and the flag categories and the override notation. She had used a version of this system herself for 27 years. The GTA booking system integrated last year with the new Apex route backend, which she had thought nothing of at the time because she had not known whose backend it was. Centered on the screen in clean red letters. Personnel profile. Hard ban. Global aviation blacklist. Reason. Gross misconduct. Documented racial discrimination. Initiated Apex route admin portal. Manual override disabled. She read it once. She read it again. She looked at the words Apex Route Admin Portal, and she felt the floor of the small office reorganize itself beneath her. She had voided Marcus Webb's boarding pass with a system flag. She had triggered a Level 3 fraud lock on his profile and watched the red screen appear on her terminal and felt at the time the satisfaction of institutional machinery doing what it was supposed to do. She had put that lock on his access to the flight. She had done it deliberately, with certainty, with the conviction of someone who had spent 27 years learning how to use the system. She was looking at the system now. It had learned from her. Donna Thomas said gently, because he was a genuinely decent person in an uncomfortable situation. "I'm sorry. This specific flag is integrated with the FAA and the International Hiring Consortium. It means I'm not able to extend an offer. Company policy actually requires me to ask you to leave the building. He paused. I'm really sorry. She waited for the words that would come next. The words she had always had available in every difficult conversation in 27 years of gate management. The words about protocol, about institutional experience, about the appropriate channels for review and appeal. She opened her mouth. Her throat was dry. Nothing came. There was no protocol for this. There was no appeal window. There was no Frank Hollister to call, no desk phone to pick up, no manager to arrive and back her reading of the situation. There was only the screen and the name on it, and the 19-year-old who had written the code that put it there, who had built the lock she had used against him into a system so thorough it had circled back and found her name. She had tried to ban him from a single flight. He had written the code that removed her from the sky entirely. She stood up. She smoothed her skirt, the conservative navy one she had chosen for the interview that morning. She adjusted her neck scarf, the GTA branded one worn logo side down. She checked that her lipstick was still in place, though she did not know why the check felt important, only that some habits go deeper than the reasons for them. She picked up her purse. She looked at the monitor one final time, not with hatred. There was nothing in her to direct at the screen that would have been properly called hatred. Not with the recognition of justice, because she was not there yet, and might not arrive there for a long time. She looked at it with the hollow, suspended expression of someone who has reached the end of a story they believed had a different ending, and who is only now in this small, fluorescent office, understanding what they wrote. She turned. She walked out of the office, down the hallway, through the glass door, into the departures level of Newark Liberty International Airport, where the automated doors opened into the cold gray morning and the sound of engines building somewhere overhead. She did not look up. She did not know where she was going next. She knew only that the sky above her was full of aircraft operating on software she had not written and could not change, carrying passengers. She had spent 27 years deciding the worth of running on a code built by a teenager in a faded Howard hoodie who had bent down to pick up his own passport from the floor and stood up and looked at her, and chosen in that moment, not anger, but precision. She had never understood the difference. She was beginning to. The airport doors closed behind her. The departures level carried on without her, as it had always intended to, as it would continue to do. Inside, the departure boards updated, flight after flight, gate after gate. The ordinary, endless movement of people going where they needed to go. Somewhere tonight, Marcus Webb is at a gate. It might be JFK. It might be Heathrow or O'Hare or SFO. He is probably early. He is probably working. There is probably a sparkling water, lime, not lemon, on the armrest beside him, going slowly warm while he types. He is not defined by what happened at gate B14. He is not carrying it as a wound or a victory or the central story of who he is. He carries it the way he carries everything that has happened to him since he was 12 years old, standing in a hotel lobby with a badge that said he had earned the right to be in the room as information, as preparation, as one more thing he knows about the world that makes him more ready for the next version of it. There is a particular kind of courage that does not look like courage from the outside. It does not raise its voice. It does not demand witnesses, though it does not flinch from them either. It decides, quietly at great personal cost over and over again across years of accumulated evidence, to stay in the room, to remain exactly as prepared as the situation requires, to let the truth be the loudest thing present, because it always is, in the end, for the person willing to wait for it. Marcus Webb did not win at gate B14 because he was powerful. He was 19 years old, and he was alone in a terminal with a canvas backpack and a broken zipper. He won because he was prepared. And he was prepared because he understood from 12 years of standing in lobbies and conference rooms and boarding lines that no one was going to prepare the room for him. that the rooms were going to require him to arrive already ready, that the only response to that unfairness that would actually work was to become the most ready person in every room, every time indefinitely. That is not a small thing to ask of a person. It is not a small thing to maintain. It costs something every time. He knows that. He has always known that. What he also knows, what Gate B14 proved in the most complete and public way possible, is that it works. That precision outlasts assumption, that patience in the right hands is not passivity. It is strategy. It is power. It is the thing that writes the code that locks the door. If this story moved you, if Marcus's patience in that terminal said something to you about the kind of person you want to be or the kind of world you want to live in, please take 1 second right now and hit that like button. It costs nothing, and it helps this story reach someone who needs to hear it. If you're not subscribed yet, subscribe right now. Every week we bring you stories of dignity, justice, and the people who refuse to be erased. Share this video with someone in your life who needs a reminder that staying calm and staying ready is its own kind of power. And drop a comment below. Tell me what you would have done in Marcus's position, or tell me where you're watching from tonight. Your voice matters here. Thank you for watching. There is always another story, and the next one might be about someone you recognize. It might be about you.